conservatives are not fans of cancel culture or erasing history, unless it happens to, of course, be about civil rights and for black people and more. Now, the story that I'm referring to is the fact that public schools in Texas are getting one step closer to no longer being required to teach about various American civil rights movements in their social studies classes. So, fighting against things like slavery, Jim Crow, the abolitionists, John Brown, the actual reason for the Civil War, of course, being slavery, among other things. In fact, that's no longer going to be taught in Texas, at least if Republicans have their way. Now, Bloomberg was reporting that on Friday, the state Senate voted 18-4 to pass Senate Bill 3, which drops requirements for teachers to include lessons on Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony, the history of the Native Americans, the writings of Martin Luther King Jr., and other figures and documents in their curriculums. Some examples, of course, is the things that are not required to teach: the I Have a Dream speech and the letter from a Birmingham jail. Fascinating. The Senate bill passed bill will also remove most mentions of people of color and women from those requirements, along with a requirement that students be taught about the history of white supremacy and, quote, the ways in which it is morally wrong. Oh, great. See, look at that. We're balanced. See, yes, we may be removing almost all instances of the achievements of black people, indigenous people, and women, but hey, we are at least going to say white supremacy bad. Oh, wonderful. So white supremacy bad, which I agree with, but here's absolutely no examples of any of the very important contributions to America by people of color, indigenous people, and women. Now, if you don't realize how insidious and disgusting that is, remember, if people growing up don't know about these important contributions, their opinions on these select groups of people are actually shaped by modern discourse. For example, modern conversations involving, things like Chicago and Philadelphia, things that you see on the news, things that you might see on, for example, Fox News, about people, protesting George Floyd and things like that. So they're going to look at all that stuff, and they're not going to know the important, the important contributions of these groups. All they're going to see is the modern discourse of, well, black people obviously lazy and violent. And so, therefore, even though we were taught white supremacy bad, they're going to think, well, if these people are all lazy moochers, then, maybe white supremacy not so bad. I mean, that's obviously the worst outcome that you could imagine. And so that does reinforce white supremacy. When you teach people that black people lazy, bad, indigenous people are all, whatever, like, all they do is drink and gamble, blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, that does reinforce white supremacy. And so, I think their lesson on, well, this is why it's morally wrong. Well, that's not going to solve the issue of white supremacy. That's bad. This is incredibly insidious. Now, and of course, this all comes after Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott, previously signed a bill that banned teachers from discussing critical race theory and the 1619 Project. By the way, critical race theory was not even being taught in high school. It's a college level course. But again, these legislators in Texas are dictating how teachers should teach about current events in the classrooms. Now, the idea behind this, they say, is to more explicitly define what can and can't be taught. And so, as a result, this is indoctrination. The thing that literally conservatives always accuse liberals of doing, indoctrination, erasing history. That's what they're trying to do. It's all projection. Okay? And they've been doing this, by the way, conservatives have, since the end of the Civil War. The Confederate racists may have lost in the battlefield. They didn't actually give up the war. They just took the war to the classroom and to the ballot box. And they whitewashed history, literally in some cases. They erected a ton of monuments to Confederate figures, literally decades after the end of the Civil War. In fact, peak construction of Civil War monuments actually occurred between the late 1890s and up to 1920, with the second smaller peak in the late 1950s to 1960s. Gee, I wonder what happened around that time. Weird. Interesting. Yes, that second surge happened to be in the middle of the Civil Rights Movement. And these statues, of course, understand statues don't teach history. They were not there to teach history. What they were put up there to do was, of course, to give veneration to a group of racist traitors to this country. And that's it. Now, going back to the bill, according to Bloomberg, it would also permit teachers from speaking about current events or controversial issues without giving deference to any one perspective. So basically what they're trying to say is both sides. There are good people on both sides. They did to President Trump. In Charlottesville, there were good people on both sides. Oh, okay. Well, you had anti-racist counter-protesters on one side, and then you had neo-Nazis, the KKK, and Proud Boys, all on the other side. Well, one side is by definition bad. But no, we're going to both sides it and say that there are good people on both sides of this issue because we don't want to give deference to any perspective. Wow. So, yeah, look at that, huh? Now, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who presides over the Senate, said in a statement after the vote that Senate Bill 3 will make certain that critical race philosophies, including the debunked 1619 founding myth, are removed from our school curriculum statewide. They were never even in there to begin with. But Patrick said this, quote, "Parents want their students to learn how to think critically, not be indoctrinated by the ridiculous leftist narrative that America and our Constitution are rooted in racism." Okay, here's the thing. They were rooted in racism, but also misogyny as well. In fact, when the Constitution was first signed, the only people that were able to actually participate in the political process were land-owning, wealthy white men. And that's it. Black people, which were slaves at the time, were not even considered a whole person. Women were considered second-class citizens. They weren't allowed to vote until 1920. So now the brilliance of the Constitution is the ability to actually amend it, to change it, to expand rights to people. That's the best part about this country. That's the best part about the Constitution is you can change it. I know there are, of course, people that are like, no, you can't ever change it. Okay, but what about all the amendments, all the times that we've actually changed it? Ridiculous, right? Again, we've changed it plenty of times. In fact, we changed it when we ended slavery. We expanded the franchise to women. Also lowered the voting age to get more people involved in the process. Those were all amendments to the Constitution. And so that's the good thing about this, is that you have this document that is a living document that allows the country to be able to progress and actually expand rights to more people. And so I think showing the history of where we came from compared to where we're at now, which of course we still have a lot of work to do, obviously. But I think showing that evolution, I think is a point of pride. How we got better as a nation as we go and more progressive as a nation. How we can change and evolve to become a better country. Now, of course, he would only be against something like that, however, if you believe that expanding rights to more people was a bad thing. But surely that can't be it, right? Now, the bill, as I said, is ridiculous. It is a erasing of history. It's a erasing of Black people, Indigenous people, and women and all their wonderful contributions to this country. This country would not be the same. Would not be, it wouldn't be the same without those contributions. It wouldn't be America without the contributions of these people. And so it's disgusting to erase history like this. Okay. Now, thankfully, there were members of the Democratic Party who actually showed some spine, some backbone. Now, they have left the state of Texas. Now, the reason they did so is to prevent the legislature from having a quorum. They literally had no other options left to them, so they're like, all right, we're just going to go then. We're going to prevent you from getting a quorum and pass these ridiculous bills. So these bills can't get passed. They've got no chance. And other bills, by the way, being pushed by the Republicans in the legislature are, things that eviscerate voting rights. And so far, they're holding strong, even when it comes to, calls for them to be arrested if they ever go back to Texas. And so, you know what? As far as they're concerned, good. I hope they hold strong. Desperate times call for desperate measures, because stuff like this cannot be allowed to pass. We cannot actually erase history. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.